Located in picturesque Whittier, Monte's Camera has been a staple of the Uptown community for over 70 plus years. Today we speak with Kim, one of the sons of the original owner. But before we get into today's video, please make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notifications on, and share this video so you don't miss another exciting episode of Doing It with Damani. Today we have Kim of Monte's Camera. How are you doing today, Kim?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. So you've been in business for how long?
This store was opened by our dad in 1948.
Oh, brothers.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were brothers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
There's basically, this business consisted of a mom and a dad and eventually three brothers. The oldest is Chris, middle brother is Mark, and I'm the baby, I'm Kim.
Really?
Not a baby now.
Of all the years I've lived in Whittier, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Is that common knowledge?
I mean, for our customers, they all pretty much knew us if you go back to our heyday, and but it's a definite mom and pop business, and started small, built up. We had some great years in the 70s and 80s, and now we're kind of on the downside, you know. But I can't argue with our success in the past, you know. So
Right.
happy with it.
So you remember running around this shop like as a little top?
From the time I was a little kid, we had a counter over here with a stool, and I used to sit on the stool and spin until I got dizzy. But that was, you know, I didn't care. I didn't care about the store other than I'd come up here to screw around. And but yeah, it's been a part of all our lives from birth, pretty much, for all of us.
So in all that time, what has been the key to your longevity?
Well, we've always adapted one way or another. You know, starting out in the 40s and mostly the 50s, the camera business, you know, the manufacturer would have a wholesale price and then a retail price, and pretty much the standard was you stuck to the retail price.
Mm-hmm.
Discounts were not done, and that probably can extend to just about any business back in that era, 50s and 60s. Once the 70s came along, you started to get a lot of pressure from some of the big stores would open up in the main cities like New York and Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
and the big stores started to discount, and they might knock 10 or 15 or 20% off a list. And so everybody's, you know, worried about the margins going away.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the competitive edge you need, and so we followed along with it. It got to the point that by the 70s, when you sold a camera, you were making 10%, pretty much. And so in the 1970s, things got more competitive.
Okay.
And a lot of the big stores in the big cities would start offering discounts off of list price. And by the time all of that got done, by the late 70s, pretty much the general rule was if you wanted to stay competitive in this business price-wise, you had to mark up about 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Complete opposite. I mean, it used to be, I think, probably about a 50% markup from wholesale to list back in the 50s and 60s. So the whole thing had changed. The business had changed, and now it's very competitive. Now you're cutting things down to the bone, and generally what we would survive on would be the margins on film. Photo finishing was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
And we always opted for looking for the best labs we could find.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is probably what sustained us more than anything else, is that in the 70s particularly, you started to see the little photomat booths pop up everywhere. And convenience, like today, convenience started to win out over quality, and people would drive off, drop their film off, and come back the next day and pick it up. We offered photo finishing that was far better than anything in our area. And so we would have people flocking to our store strictly to get their film developed.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe they did buy a camera from a mail order place in New York, but now they're taking all these pictures with this expensive camera, and they're getting substandard photo finishing. And so the word got out that if you wanted good photos, you would come to Monte's. And so by that, they come in here, they develop their film, they get great results, they stick around, maybe they start buying accessories and cameras, and we had a lot of customers for life.
So that was your niche, producing good quality photos.
We stuck to good quality everything, and the other thing that we've always offered since my dad opened this place was service. You know, there were a lot of places where, you know, they're just there to sell stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't buy a camera from any of us here without getting a full-on tutorial on how to use it before you walked out the door. And that was just part of the deal. It's like, we know you can get these cameras for a similar price, possibly lower somewhere else. So we're going to teach you how to use it. And so we always had we had little scratch pads and also on our business cards, in quotes, true customer service. And that was my dad. And he started that, and it continued on through all the years.
That's interesting, because as a photographer myself, I've seen the merge from film to digital.
Mm-hmm.
And the print back in the day for film meant everything. You can have the top camera, you can have the top film, you can have the top everything. But if your prints came back and they weren't up to par, everything was lost.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Kim. So socially, how has photography changed during the duration of your time here in Whittier? Or in business, rather?
The way I've put it in the last few years is that today, more photos are taken per second today than in all of history. You could go back throughout history, and more people are taking photos today because of cell phones. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, everybody on Instagram, whatever social media they're posting to, they're all taking some sort of photos. And I say there's more photos being taken, but they are all much less quality or lower quality than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one thing film would make you do is that when you would load up a camera, you'd have either 24 or 36 shots. And if you were on a trip, you might have other rolls of film in a bag. But you knew in your head you had a finite number. And so when you were going to take a photo, you were going to make sure it counted. And you would stop, you'd look at the scene if it was landscape, look at the scene, try to figure out, how is this going to look good? How do I frame it? Do I want deep depth of field or shallow depth of field, which now they're calling bokeh? It's been depth of field for years. It's shallow depth of field.
Right.
And you would take all that into account, and you might take several minutes, usually to the chagrin of your family, to get the shot, rather than just take a snapshot,
Right.
At arm's length, a selfie or something like that. And those photos are all great, and they show you in a second, oh, here I am at the beach or whatever. But people would come out with some real quality stuff as amateurs, and that's what I think the average hobbyist, when they would go out and spend $500 to $800 on a camera outfit, they didn't want to go out and take snapshots.
Right.
They wanted to come home and show their friends and family that, look, I'm getting pretty good at this. Look at these photos. And it became a thing of pride. And these days, they really are all pretty much snapshots.
Right. That harkens back to the conversation we had earlier about editing.
Yes.
A lot of it now with digital. Back in the day of film,
Mm-hmm.
you did your editing in the darkroom.
Correct.
Now it's all on your phone or your laptop in front of you.
Yeah.
Okay, Kim. So that was a good answer. What tips do you have for entrepreneurs who may be in the photography industry or may not be in the photography industry, but just entrepreneurs in general?
Well, I'd say the main thing is that whatever idea you have about a business, you definitely want to make sure that there is a major need for it. And that is really, I think, the biggest issue you have to tackle is, where am I going to find a product or service that is going to be something that everybody needs, or at least the average person really needs? And if I find that niche, how much competition do I have in my area?
Mm-hmm.
Before I go and open a store down the street, are there 10 guys around me within a mile that do the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the trick. And, back when my dad started this place in the 40s, I think there must have been 3 or 4 camera stores just in Uptown.
Mm-hmm.
Within 2 blocks of here, there were 3 or 4 camera stores. And he started out working for one. It was down the street. It was called Barton's. And these days you'll see a lot of they were postcards that identify Barton Studio, and they're old shots of
Mm-hmm.
Uptown Whittier and just all around Whittier. Chances are my dad printed half of those. I don't know for sure.
Right.
But I know that he worked in the darkroom at Barton's. And so he he decided that, basically he didn't want to work for somebody else. He knew the camera business. He was an avid photographer. He was into it big time as far
Mm-hmm.
as a hobby. And he decided, I could open a store like this, and I think I could be successful. And he talked to his father about it, and his father was a banker with B of A back from the time that they were the Bank of Italy. I mean, he was with them for a long time, his whole career with them. And he talked to him about it, and he said, the one thing that survives all the up and down times, because they'd all been through the Depression, are hobbies. He said, people get into their hobbies. If they're out of work, even though they might be out of a job or just they don't have much to spend on anything, an inexpensive hobby is something that will sustain through those times. And so, you know, back then, having a home darkroom was not an expensive hobby. The materials were fairly cheap. You just needed to kind of take over one of your bathrooms and black it all out. And you could be printing pictures till 2 in the morning in your bathroom, you know, and having fun. And so that's what made his decision to start this place. And originally, what this was, in fact, from here over, this part of the store, there was a hobby shop uptown, and it was called Hobbyland. And the guy had enough hobby products to fill up pretty much half the store. The other half was, I don't know if it was completely empty, but it was obvious that he didn't have enough inventory to fill the whole store. And my dad had been in there because he was into model airplanes and stuff, and he said, hey, you know, what about me renting out half the store? And so the guy agreed, and my dad got some cameras and came in here and basically had half the hobby store, and he called it Hobbyland Camera. And the guy who owned the hobby shop thought that he wouldn't last, but it turned out the hobby guy didn't last, and my dad did. And that's what eventually became Monte's Camera Shop. The hobby guy left. My dad took over the whole space, and from there, eventually, he and the owners of Whittier Paint and Wallpaper bought the building. So it was the start of something back then.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to introduce Thomas the Cat. Can you tell us anything about Thomas the Cat?
Well, Thomas was originally not ours. I'm going to put him down, but you all see Thomas, and probably most of you know him. He was originally from a pet bakery that was a couple doors down the street, and it was called Pa's Bakery, and they made in-house baked pet treats, plus they sold pet supplies. And I don't know exactly how they got a hold of him, but I guess he had a sister or brother. The 2 kittens were over there, and one of them either got sold or given away, I don't know which. And they ended up keeping Thomas as kind of their little store kitten, and he grew up into a cat. And we would see him, he would just stroll by the front door and, you know, kind of look in and keep walking. But he would just spend time right up in this block. He would come out, and he was very careful. He was an amazing cat as far as survival goes. And they eventually, after a couple of years, their business, I guess, wasn't panning out. I'm not sure what happened, but they were going to close. And they had tried taking him home, and my understanding is that they, being pet people, had dogs and cats at home, and probably they had other male cats or a male cat. Anyway, Thomas and somebody wasn't getting along. And they thought, well, we're not going to disrupt our whole household, so we need to do something with Thomas. About the day that they were going to close up, he had already started to come over here a lot. We were spoiling him with treats and stuff like that. So he would spend a lot of his day here, and they asked if we wanted him, and we said absolutely.
Thomas the Cat.
And that, if I recall, was probably about 17 years ago, and he was 2 then, so we figure he's probably about 19 now.
Oh, I didn't know he was that old. I thought he was in like maybe 13.
No, he's up there. He's almost 2 decades.
Thomas the Cat. That's a staple of Whittier. Okay, Kim, that was some really good information. Do you have a favorite camera?
Yes. You know, we get a lot of cameras in here, obviously. We have a lot of people that are cleaning out closets and homes, and they're bringing in all these old cameras. And, of course, they might have a folding Kodak or something, and they think that we're probably going to get excited about it when we don't, because unfortunately for us on that side of the counter, we've seen all of that.
Okay.
And Kodaks are just about a dime a dozen. But cameras like this, you don't see very often. So this is, I would say, my favorite camera in the store. So what this is a camera out of Germany. The earliest mention of production I could find was 1914, produced up through the early 20s, I believe. This is an Oryx, O-R-I-X, model 308. It does have a Zeiss lens, which Carl Zeiss was the guy who pretty much, I think, figured out every good lens formula years ago, and just about everybody has mimicked him since. And the Zeiss name means a lot in the optics business. And this camera actually shoots 10 by 15 centimeter glass plates. And a lot of people don't realize that really before film, that glass plates were what was used. And if you go back to the Civil War, if you look at all the Matthew Brady stuff, all of that was glass plate photography. In fact, in the Civil War, they used wet plates which meant that the photographer, was in a totally light, tight tent, and he had blank glass plates that he would coat with film emulsion. He would take those plates out into the field, do his shots, then come back to the tent and process them. So we think it's so easy now. Think about them. They had to work to really get an image. So how George Eastman even came about to come up with Eastman Kodak was the fact that he was trying to come up with a way that we could get away from glass plates. So he was trying to find a medium that you could roll, so you would have a roll of film, and the photographer wouldn't have to be loading individual plates or sheets. And he came up with film. I'm sure there were other people working on it, but he's the one who got all the major patents, and that's how Eastman Kodak got started. And if you talk to anybody in Rochester, New York, Kodak was Rochester, New York for many years. And they are still in business, in case anybody wonders about that. They're, like we are, a shadow of what they once were, but they're still at it.
I want to thank Kim for taking the time for doing this vlog for us. He provided a wealth of history and knowledge and the nostalgic photos that you see throughout the film. Thank you so much. This is the end of our vlog. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video so you don't miss the next exciting episode of Doing It with Damani. Today's comment section shout out goes to Tina Marie. If you want to be shouted out from the comment section, make sure you comment in the section down below, and perhaps you can get shouted out in the next video. Thank you very, very much for watching. And remember, entrepreneurs out there, you don't have to do it alone anymore when you can do it with Damani.